Welcome to day 4 of social studies. We continue with our second major question, thinking about how we prepare ourselves for a changing future. Remember that the goal of school is to get ready for life. That's why we call graduation commencement, because you are beginning what's next. And what's next for many of you is a world that's going to be filled with change. We've talked about the different forces that are causing change to accelerate in the world today. Yesterday, we introduced this graph that Thomas Friedman shared in a lecture in which he shows the problem facing people in the modern world. Pause the video for a moment and try and think in your head how you'd explain this graph. Hopefully you're looking at the axes and remembering that this axis shows time. So the further you move to the right, the more time is moving forward into the future. The y-axis is showing the speed or rate at which change is taking place. So the higher on this graph, the more change is happening. And what it's showing us is that technology over time is going at a faster and faster rate of change. You can see the line getting higher. Whereas human adaptability is going a little bit higher, but not nearly as quickly as technology. And so what we need to do is figure out how to learn in a way that can help us keep up. And that's the goal of this lesson, and it should be the goal of our year. Once we've identified those skills, let's focus on them throughout social studies class and the rest of our schedule. In front of you, you're going to want to get out the reading packet that we worked on yesterday, as well as the writing prompt that we began to introduce. Get out the blue paper, or at least give it to your families if you haven't already yet, remembering that that is due next week. Our goal this period is to finish up a little bit of our discussion strategies over the last few days, to then work on gathering our evidence in a graphic organizer, and to begin our actual essay by introducing what we'll call the MLA system, which is the set of rules we follow for writing here at the middle school and the high school. If you remember yesterday, we ended having finished the reading and done some of the initial questions. Take a moment and look through pages 2 and 3 of that reading packet and see if you can identify the 4 skills that Friedman thinks are necessary in the changing future. Pause the video now and search for them. Hopefully, the 4 you were able to find are these that are listed. I would also add that he mentions asking questions within one of those, and I think it's a separate enough idea that we can almost call it a bonus answer, and it's one that I'm going to use as an example as we go through some of our other work. One chance to think more deeply comes through discussion, and you won't have a chance to talk about these with your partners, but you can think through them a little bit. One concern that I often have with students is that when a teacher gives them a writing prompt, they too often jump immediately into the writing before they've even had time to think deeply about the ideas. They read the prompt and instantly I see their pencil going, and it's because I think they're only pondering kind of one word at a time. We want to think first and write second, and so discussing some of these ideas at the outset can be helpful. What you're going to do is I'm going to bring each of these topics back on the board for a moment, and I'm going to have you pause the video for them and think about how you would explain what that skill means, and you should look back at the text to find that. Predict from your own ideas why you think that's valuable, and kind of self-evaluate your own performance. Think about how well you already do what he's describing. So maybe what would be best here is pick 2 of these and see if you can go through the green bullet points in your head. Pause the video now as you work through that. Having a chance to look, think, put ideas into words is really helpful. And so that's something that you should be doing every time we write. In your email instructions, I'm going to describe a reading check that I'd like you to do. What I'm pointing out here on the screen is just drawing attention to students that when I assign a reading check like this, sometimes what I will do is embed the reading inside the Schoology assignment. And so you can see like this is a Schoology page with like a little Google Doc embedded there. If you scroll over top of the actual Google Doc, it will move the reading. If you scroll over the rest of the screen, it will move that Schoology screen. And so you kind of have to know, like, sometimes you need to swipe your finger over both. I also wanted to point out that when you enter a new attempt, and so you use that little button for a quiz in Schoology, what that will often do is when it brings up the questions, they hide the instructions. And so if you need to use a digital version of the reading, you might need to click that button so you can see it again. Today, you should be able to use the paper copy. For the moment, though, don't do anything with this reading check. I will have that as a separate set of instructions in my email. You'll notice that you're going to get 5 attempts. Be thoughtful, though. Each attempt will actually generate some unique questions. I programmed in like 10 different questions, and it's going to pick 5 of them at random for you to answer. So take your time, use the reading. Your goal will be to aim for at least 4 out of 5. You do not need a perfect score for this to get full credit. But save that for later. For now, get your writing prompt out in front of you. Okay, we went over that yesterday. Turn that writing prompt to the back. One of the skills we're going to practice this year is creating effective topic sentences. It's really important that we analyze the prompt, that we know what it's asking, that we get a sense of who our audience and what our purpose is, and that we use all of that to create topic sentences and focused writings. Hopefully your teachers in previous years talked about how to write a strong topic sentence. You should rely on the prompt. You should use keywords like the author's names or the traits that they want us to describe. And that one of the strategies you can use is rewriting that question as a statement. Don't just completely rewrite it. You have to transform it into a statement, maybe one that adds your ideas, or maybe one that is just naming the goal of the writing. And so in this case, even if we're not going to identify our 2 skills because we haven't chosen them yet, you can create a topic sentence that at least makes your point clear. Take a moment, pause the video, copy this topic sentence onto your sheet. This next step is probably one of the most important, so don't rush it. These are the 4 skills that we read about. You need to pick 2 of those to write an essay on. You're picking which ones you think are important, but you're also picking which ones you understand and feel like you will be ready to explain. So don't pick one that confuses you. It might be worth it to look back at the reading again and just kind of see like which of his pieces of this text in those 2nd and 3rd pages you were exploring earlier, which of those resonates the most with you. Once you choose the 2 you want to write about, record them in these top 2 boxes. Pause the video now while you do that. As an example, maybe I would say asking good questions. Your next step is to fill in this evidence box. And one of the things I want students to recognize is that planning for an essay is really important, but that doesn't mean it needs to take forever or involve a lot of writing. Your planning is where you're focused on ideas, not necessarily the language you're using. The goal is to make sure that you're keeping organized, that you're addressing all of the prompt, that you're able to see how your ideas might connect together, and that you're kind of getting everything ready so that then you can focus on the sentences later. And so like when it comes to the evidence, I don't need you to rewrite the paper on this organizer and then type it again on Monday. I just want you to make sure that you know where there is evidence and that you are using it when you sit down to type. And so for the moment, all we're identifying is like what page and paragraph number we would find a detail about the topics that you chose. And so that's what I want you to fill in for yours. If you picked Learning to Learn, go find which page of the packet that's on, count down which paragraph it is from the top, and write that paragraph number in here. And you can do the same thing for your second trait too. So plug in both of those, pause the video while you do it. The last step is a little more of a challenge. This is what we call the elaboration. Sometimes we also call it explanation. Those two things are pretty similar. And what this is it's where you're adding your own thinking to your text. That when we are writing, we do not want to be writing only by quoting someone else. I know that your past teachers have trained you to use evidence, and we should, but we need to combine that evidence with our own thinking. We need a balance between that research and our new ideas to create more value. And sometimes that's where we are adding our own examples. Sometimes it's where we're explaining the same idea in a different way because we think it might be confusing. Sometimes it's when we're taking the next step, like in this case, perhaps describing why we believe each skill is important. And so you can see that if asking good questions is my trait, and here's the evidence where Friedman explains it, here is my own thinking about why I believe this is valuable. And on my organizer, this doesn't need to be fancy or a complete sentence. I'm just generating the ideas so that I can use that when I sit down to write my essay. I know that that is a little bit difficult, but I want you to give it a try anyway. Pause the video, plug in both of those boxes. Our last step for today is that I'm introducing students to what's called MLA style. And I'm going to send you the link to an introductory document that outlines this. When you come back to class, I'll make sure to give you a paper about it that we'll keep in our binder. Basically, MLA, which stands for the Modern Language Association, is a group of writers and English folk who created this rule book of what we call style. And what it does is it sets the way that we should write things if we're following this system. It outlines the format of your paper. It shows how to create citations and a work cited. It creates rules for some of the types of words we're supposed to use and not use. It's basically creating a common framework that everyone using this style follows to make life easier for both readers and writers. And so we're going to teach students how to use this in 7th grade. And it's the same system that you're going to use straight through high school. And so we will work together on it on these first few essays and then gradually hope that you're getting more and more independent so that you're ready for the years to come. And that's where we'll stop. When we get back to class the next day, we will actually start writing our essays and setting up that style and using our organizer. So today was a chance to kind of get prepared.